Welcome to today's live video. This video was inspired by a client call that I had this weekend, and it's one of the topics that can ruffle some feathers. So if you feel offended, it's okay. There's a lot of kind of negativity to the idea of comparing child rearing and dog training. And I get it. I get where that comes from. Also, we can choose to take lessons and learning from literally anything. So that is what I have chosen to do in an effort to explain what to take from dog training and what other information definitely changes the two. I have made some lists. So I'm going to go through the things that are the same, the things that are different and how they're different, and why. So the first part will be the things that are not the same. So dogs, they need for training rewards and treats, right? You train them really easily, really well with some sort of treat, typically food based. That's not so with kids. In fact, there's actually consequences to using that strategy with kids, including having the opposite effect you intended. It makes kids want to up the ante on their treat or their reward and then focus on that reward and not actually what they were learning. Whereas dogs, you can wean the reward away and then they like retain the skill or the thing they learned. Kids typically don't. So we tend to steer away from treats and rewards. When do I include treats and rewards? When it's a situation where the kiddo is not having it. Like, this is not something that the kid enjoys, such as we have to go get blood drawn, right? That sucks. Like, it genuinely does. There is no amount of talking or parenting that's going to convince that child. They're like, yay, stick a needle in my arm, fun. Like, no, that's not going to happen. So in that sort of instance where I am the parent, this is happening, if I want to offer some sort of external motivation or incentive or just lessen the blow a little bit, I might say, let's do that and then we can go get ice cream together to make it a little less sucky. But it's not it's not the same as, I'm going to give you an M&M every time you're nice to your sister. Well, at some point, that M&M's not going to be worth it. And that's just how rewards and kids work. There's a whole book on it, Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kahn, if you feel like reading more into that. Anyways, voice commands are most typically what's used for well-trained dogs. Voice commands very, very rarely work with small children, and they actually need you to go help them. They really need you to show them, like, I actually meant it when I said it. I didn't just say it for funsies. And a lot of times we inadvertently train our kids to not listen to us. We stand there and we say something and they don't do it. And then we say it again and they don't do it. And then we say it again and they don't do it. And we're like, go help them. They're showing you they can't, go to them. And I suppose there's some overlap there for dogs too. But a lot of times when people are used to having dogs, they're used to being able to just have those short commands and the dog follows them. The dog's entire world is making you happy and being bonded to you, and you're their leader and tell me what to do. I want to work, I want to do things. And kids have like their whole own world going on. So sometimes they definitely need a more hands-on approach. That doesn't mean a violent approach. That doesn't mean a mean approach or an angry approach. I'm fond of saying that it's for us to do to hold our boundaries. And it's not really fair for us to be mad at our kids that we need to hold our boundaries. There are boundaries, right? So for a dog, they need to obey to stay safe. For a kid, they actually need to push boundaries and learn how to say no in order to be safe. They have to develop the capacity to know their own thinking and their own rationale and their own reasoning to keep themselves safe. It's a different thing. Now, you might argue, well, they need to listen to me to not go into the road. That will keep them safe. True, but here's the catch. It is not up to a 2-year-old to keep themselves safe. They can't. That's on us. So it really still isn't about them obeying, it's about you making sure that does not happen. I will hold your hand, I will walk right next to you, you will be in the stroller, whatever you need to do to make that not happen, that's on you. That's not on the 2-year-old. The 2-year-old needs to learn that her voice matters, that she can say no, that she can tell somebody hands off, that she can, be 7 and be hanging out with the kids in the front yard, and one of the kids is like, hey, I know where these pills are and they're blue and they're my mom's cupboard and we could take them from her. And that 7-year-old to be like, yeah, no, 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 that doesn't sound good at all. I'm not okay with that. Like, absolutely not. And that's very hard for kids to shun their peers. It's exceptionally hard, and they need lots of practice. That starts with us. If they cannot tell us no, their parents who they love and adore and feel safe with, they are not going to be able to tell their peers no. It's essential that they develop that skill. Dogs might need a leash and a harness. For kids, that might look different. Pick them up, put them in a baby carrier, put them in a stroller, and yes, use a toddler harness if you need to, or a toddler leash. We're not going to mom shame for keeping your kids safe. Thank you very much. Dogs have a crate. Kids need a safe play space, right? The differences have to do with kind of the specificity of what we're dealing with. So, dogs, they like their structure and their routine, right? And it can be the same their whole life. Can have the same exact thing. Kids can't. Why? Because they grow and change and develop rapidly, and tremendous changes. You're not going to have the same schedule with a newborn that you have with a 3-year-old that you have with a 13-year-old. It's going to be different. So there has to be structure and schedule and the flexibility to know when, this isn't working. Let's shift it. Let's change it. Let's pivot it. Dogs, each dog can largely be trained the same way once you have like your system and your approach, and we're talking positive dog training. I'm not about being mean to animals, so take that elsewhere, please. I don't think that people would be in this group and then be mean to animals, but nonetheless, my point is that you have a general way of training dogs, and that's what it is for all dogs. Kids are so vastly different, it's not that simple. Like, there's huge differences between kid A and kid B, even in the same family. So those are kind of the differences. Then why? And the root of why there's differences is because of the brains that we're dealing with. So a dog brain has 530 million neurons. A human brain has 16 billion. That's a lot more. Lots and lots and lots and lots more. The frontal cortex, the frontal lobe of the dog brain, makes up 7% of the dog's brain. The frontal lobe of the human brain makes up 40% of the human brain. That's a lot bigger. Dogs have a straight line of development. They're a puppy, and then they grow, and then they're like kind of an adolescent dog, and then they're a dog, and then they're an old dog. It's really just a straight line. Humans are not like that. Humans go up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, and we call those phases of development. We call those equilibrium and disequilibrium, and they are classically appropriate changes in development that happen that get a human from tiny little womb mate all the way to self-sufficient adults, which is the last part of it, that dogs are self-sufficient within a year. Like, they could run away and like live if they don't get hit by a car. They could find a way to live. They need food, they need shelter, they can do that. Try letting your 1-year-old take care of themselves. Not even remotely close. I have said before that if our children were meant to not need us, then we'd be like sea turtles. We'd just go somewhere and kind of squat and pop them out and then leave, and then they'd be on their own. But we don't have sea turtles. We have humans, and they need us for a very long time. So that's, the brains are very, very different. So then what is the same, right? So what can we learn here? Because all this has been like all the things that are different. Well, one, both need a confident leader. They need that leadership. Both will behave unruly. They will start becoming unruly when they feel insecure. Both of them need for us to supply the needs within our structured environment, right? So yes, a dog could go live on their own, but we're keeping them in our home and in our backyard, and we need to meet their needs. We also need to see their behavior as communication of their needs. So if your dog is digging through your carpet when you're gone, then they might be anxious and they might need more activity and exercise to run off that energy and be tired when you leave. The whole house might be too overwhelming and they need a safe place like their crate, right? So the behavior is telling you something, and that's entirely true with children too. They need you to use your bigger, wiser, stronger, kinder brain to make the call. When you are deciding to go on a walk, if you know that 3 houses down is an untrained, aggressive dog, you're probably not going to go that way, right? Even if your dog wants to, you're not going to be like, oh, well, nothing I can do. They want to go that way. No. And I'm like, nope, this way. And that's it. But we get really apprehensive about doing that with our kids. And we need to be able to make the call when it counts. Both children and dogs cannot function well if you're afraid of them. That confident leadership needs to come through. Both dogs and humans need us to set their environment up for their success. If you have a teething dog and you keep leaving your shoes out, they're going to chew the shoes. Quit leaving your shoes out, right? That's not even their fault. That's on you. Same thing with a toddler. If you have a toddler who's toddling around your house and you've got breakables within their reach, that's on you. Move it, right? They both need physical touch, play, affection. They both need very clear expectations. What to do? What is it you want them to do? You don't tell a dog, don't jump on the baby, that's not nice. You say down or bed, right? Does that make sense? Now, do we need to have one word commands to our kids? Not necessarily, but we need to make ourselves clear. Don't hit. What does that mean? For those of you who have read my book, I apologize, but I'm going to repeat myself because it's important. Please define don't without using the words do or not. What does don't mean? Also, the human brain doesn't process not. Doesn't process that. So we're saying don't hit, and their subconscious brain is hearing the word hit. So even if they could, as little toddlers, come up with like, okay, so maybe don't kind of sort of means like the opposite of, right? I don't know very many toddlers that can come up with that on their own, but maybe they could. Then they've got to take our words of don't hit and try to figure out what's the opposite of hit. Can you tell me? Is it lay down? Is it smack? Is it kick? Is it pet? Is it cry? Like, what is the opposite of hit? That's why we say don't hit, because there is no opposite of hit. But it's not something that the subconscious brain can process. And that prefrontal cortex that takes, that's the most important part of a human's developing brain, that prefrontal cortex part that's in charge of all of our impulses, doesn't finish developing until 25 to 26 years old. So when you've got this little person and you're like, what the heck? I told them not to hit. I told them I don't like it. I told them it hurts me. Why are they doing that? Because their brain can't stop them yet. It just can't. They need you to lend them your self-control. Oh yeah, I'm not letting you do that. And you block their hand. I'm not letting you hit me. No, thank you. It doesn't require you to scare them or to be angry at them or to raise your level of frustration or aggression. It's simple. If they could prevent it, they would. So if they don't prevent it, then they can't, which means we prevent it. We take on that responsibility, way more responsibility, for way longer than dog training. And that's okay, because we're dealing with a human and not a dog. Similarities? Yes. Really good similarities to learn from? Yes. But the differences are where it really, really counts. Understanding the kind of brain that you're working with. People really don't like the word training when it comes to kids, and I agree, there's a negative connotation to it, and it isn't as simple and straightforward as that, but still, there's a lot of training that goes on. There's a lot of like, let me teach you how the world works. Let me teach you how these things work, how interactions work, right? So it is, in a sense, training. We can call it child rearing, we can call it teaching, we can call it all these different things, but they're all kind of synonyms. So, now what might get in your way? Well, one is a belief that you are overstepping your bounds. And that's an important thing to listen to. That, of course, happens, right? Are you over controlling your child and not giving them the freedom to grow and develop? That's important to wonder. It's important to look at. But are you, on the other hand, giving them too much control to where the burden on them is overwhelming? They need to be able to rely on us. They need to be able to trust that we've got the big stuff covered. They need to worry about like toys and crayons and picking between the 3 to 5 things that we gave them on their plate, and they get to pick. They can decide what they're going to eat. But we've limited it to a reasonable choice instead of something that's totally overwhelming to them. And you'll see very similar behaviors when kids are over-controlled and when kids have too much control. So there's definitely a nuance to figuring that out. Ask yourself, does this expectation match their development? Am I expecting more than their brain is capable of right now? That's a good question. Is this expectation rooted in health or safety? Then it's probably worth holding, even if they're pissed. Is this expectation rooted in society thinking I'm a bad mom, or my mom telling me that I need to get control of my kid? Probably one you can let go, right? We weigh each situation, and there's such a huge variety. I can't tell you in one video exactly what expectations and what rules to have and what boundaries to follow through on and which ones to let go, because every kid is different and every life is different and every situation is different. That is why I do one-on-one work, because I don't think there is a way to not do one-on-one when it comes to parenting. Really and truly, it is that unique to your family. There are general things. That's what S.U.R.E parenting is for. All parents need to find a way to live in self-honor. All parents need to learn about the uniquenesses of their brain and their kids' brains. All parents need to use and implement respect in their boundary holding and in their reactions to each other. All parents need to use empathy to understand what the heck is going on with that kid's brain and their behavior and everything else. There are general principles. But if you're still wondering, like, okay, but what about, that's when we start working one-on-one. And it can be in a free call if it's just a quick question. It can be in our monthly group where we meet every Saturday and we talk about this kind of stuff. It can be one-on-one, private, customized consultation for your family. Whatever works for you, right? There's lots of examples in the book, so you can do like a DIY version. I'm actually recording the audio version of that book, which is exciting and overwhelming. And it will also have a book study. We'll do a book study group going through chapter by chapter when that happens. So I don't have a date for you, sorry, but it's exciting. But the bottom line is to trust your intuition. Know that feelings themselves do not hurt our kids. It doesn't hurt them to be mad. It doesn't hurt them to be sad. It doesn't hurt them to have a meltdown. That's not hurting them. It hurts, and a lot of us might disagree just because we remember feeling overwhelmed and unloved and hurt as a child. Been there. I feel ya. But there's a difference between being upset at a boundary but knowing you're still safe and seen and soothed and secure, knowing you're still loved, versus that boundary comes with withdrawal of love. It comes with punishments. It comes with aggression. It comes with danger at the hands of your parents. That made us think that the boundary was the problem, but it wasn't the boundary. It was how the boundary was held. It was the fear and the unsafety that came with that boundary. Don't let that experience and that genuine, very valid fear stop you from being the confident leader that your kiddo needs. They need that. You needed that. If your parents had been able to hold boundaries in a respectful way, then that feeling wouldn't be inside of you right now. It wasn't the boundary. There are just as many, not just as many in my experience, but there are also adults who felt just as insecure because their parents couldn't hold boundaries as there are adults who feel insecure because their parents held their boundaries with violence and aggression and shaming and punishments and withdrawal of affection and those kinds of things. Both sides harm. You have to have boundaries. They are absolutely essential and vital. They are how your child feels secure in the world. And if you are struggling with that, just know you're not alone. You're not alone. It is tough. It's okay to need to work through your triggers. It's okay to need to sit down and journal out, like, why was that so difficult? Why does that feel so overwhelming? Where is that coming from? It's okay to need to do that work. I think we all do to an extent. And it's okay to know, this is a health issue, love. You can be as mad as you need to be. It's not changing. This is a safety issue. I will not let this happen. Practice using the word I. There's a lot of, oh, we can't do that. And when they're really little and you're kind of doing everything with them, oh, that was another thing I wrote down. When dogs are learning, or children are learning, you need to follow them closely, right? But there's a lot of that when they're little because they're kind of always at your heel and they're doing everything with you. There's a lot of we. You kind of are a we for quite a while. But fairly soon in the scheme of life, you differentiate. And it's you and I. And your boundaries are yours. So practice using the word I. I will not let you do that. I am not okay with that. I don't let that happen in my house. If you have other kids in your house, the same thing applies. You're allowed to have boundaries in your house. It's essential. And you're teaching your kids that they can have boundaries. You are teaching them that you love people by having healthy boundaries for yourself so that you don't build resentment with them or anger with them or overwork yourself to the point of exhaustion. It's not fair to blame them when you haven't held your boundaries. Now, is it always easy to hold your boundaries? Nope, not at all. Especially the way that a lot of us were raised. But it's work worth doing. So, I hear you. I know it's tough. And it's worth it. And if you need support, you can always find me. My email for the business is sammy@sureparenting.com. Free calls as well as other calls are bit.ly/callsammy, SAMI. You guys have this group. You can post your questions, and I love answering them and having great conversations. And I would love your take on this. Have you learned anything from kind of unsuspected sources? Have you learned anything from dog training or other animal training? I don't know what that would be exactly, but I'm sure you do. You guys are a huge wealth of knowledge and information. So share below. Share what you've learned. Share what your takeaways of this are. Share if you're offended. Let's have that conversation. Practice using I. I feel offended by this. Why is that? Practice. You're allowed to have opinions. We welcome opinions here. As long as everybody is respectful, opinions are allowed. So I look forward to the conversation. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.